Okay. Today's workshop is about values. I called it When Values Collide. And I hope this title makes total sense to you when we finish today. I was thinking it's a 3-part workshop, and I was thinking we start now 3:15 more or less, and I'm aiming to be finishing by 7:30. So my idea was to do the part, then do a little break, and do the next part, the break, and then the last part. If you need a break before or need to go to the bathroom, just go ahead. That's the nice thing about online courses. Nobody is disrupted by somebody leaving. If you have any questions in between, just speak up. Just open your mic and ask. But I will always try to make room for questions, of course. Yeah, I'm not a native English speaker, so sometimes I will get lost in translation maybe. So I beg your pardon for this already. But I think we will manage. So what are we about to do today? The first part, I want to give you a little bit of theoretical input on values, or what kind, like it's a big word, and there's a lot of research going on into about that in different sciences. So I will tell you what I use the word for in this workshop, and I already want to do exercises after the first part, where you might get to know your values. This is what you need something to write for. But since this is a very private and personal thing, I'm not aiming at sharing what you find out in the exercise, but maybe talk a bit about what's happening, but you will find out soon. The second part will give you some more psychological background, on basic needs and something called cognitive dissonance, and about emotional reactions. As you might recall from the intro to the workshop, I came to the idea to do this workshop because there are happening conflicts in teams between volunteers and people on the move, for example, or even within ourselves, that might be related to things that we value, and when conflicting values meet between people or within one person themselves. And the emotional reaction that might be unpleasant is something what I want to talk about. And then I either didn't find out how to do it, or it's not possible in Google Meet. I wanted to do breakout sessions, but since I haven't found out how to do this yet, we can also do the exercise in the group. Since we are just 12 people, I think this will also go well. And then the third and last part is about communication. On the one hand, I will give you a little exercise or supporting worksheet as well, where you can find out how you get from your values to your goals, create actions, and especially how to deal with barriers that might keep you away from achieving your goals. And also the last part is about communication, how to communicate in a secure manner and how to distinguish this from insecure or aggressive communication. And then I wanted to do some role play, but we will find out how we can do this under these circumstances. Any questions so far? Okay, I will always pause here, and you can open your mic if you need some time to bring up the courage to talk or to figure out what you want to ask. I will just make a little break, and then if nobody says anything, I will just carry on. All right? Okay. So values, what are they? Like I said, I'm coming from a psychological background, and I discussed this work with some of my friends who study different things or work in different fields, and they were like, "What kind of definition are you using? This is way too broad, and this is something I really personally like for my work as a psychologist. That psychology is not taking terms so super serious and spend a lot of time with definitions and just use more broader or generous definitions of values, for example. And this is what we do here today as well. But what we can say is that values are characteristics or qualities that we find desirable or morally good, like ideas or ideals. Also, some facts are more valuable than others. Also, it goes in behavior and pattern of action and in character traits. So, do you have any idea, or do you have any kind of, is there something coming to your mind that might be meant by these kind of values, or after this definition? Like, what is a character trait that might be? Let's talk about the volunteer scene or the activist scene. What kind of character trait is something that is desirable or morally good in this? Yeah, go for it.
For example, being understanding and being kind and trying to position yourself. For me, it's like kind of a value.
Exactly. For example, yeah. And we find these kind of like values in some of the organizations as well. Like solidarity is something I think a lot of you value much, and we find in solidarity wheels or solidarity kitchen and stuff like that. I put it in my work email address as well because it's something I find desirable as well. Any questions on that so far? All right, let's tag along for the ride. So, where do they come from? Where do we get our values? And it's a bit more tricky because sometimes it's like, yeah, there's something that was always important to me, or it's something I got from my family. I was brought up in a way that I learned that this is the right or the wrong thing to do. You learn it in school and culture, and like this, what I put there in the first row, implicit learning is something that you know or you learn without being taught directly, like something that you copy from people that you like, or something that you get positive feedback for because it's viewed as desirable character trait. But nobody actually teaches you how to have this value. Other things that are more, let's say, visible is values that are negotiated within your peers or communities or in society, like talking about like values are a fluid thing that change over the years or that get new meaning. And when you talk about gender conflicts or how language should be used or which kind of words are right or wrong or hurtful, this is also something that got to do with values and is negotiated, and we live with the results. And this is also something that might cause conflict. So some of our values are pretty accessible. Like we just talked about, to be understanding or solidarity or something like that, but some of these are not so much accessible or when I ask you about your set of values, might be a bit harder to just name one thing. But it might be more about what you that you can describe it in more sentences. Any questions on that? On where we get our values, or do you want to add something? Is there something missing? All right. What is this good for? We already have like laws, and we have moral norms and agreements, and some of these are limiting. But like basically, if I would explain this to a child that comes up to me and asks me what's values, it's something that helps us to tell right from wrong. And there you already see this again. These are words that are very like we all know what it means, but it's we all have different sets of explanations or different sets of definitions for what is right and what is wrong, because we have different values, or they have different weight within our value system. And these values are guidelines for our personal decisions and behaviors, speaking as a psychologist on the individual base. And of course, it's something that creates a feeling of belonging and brings us together, that we find the group where we feel like we are belonging because we share a set of values and a set of interests and of moral standards, for example. It's also, it shapes a lot of how we live and how we shape our relationships, for example. And talking about No Name Kitchen, it's also like as a community or as a movement, it can manifest itself in something like the code of conduct. Are there any questions or additions for that so far? Okay, all right. So values, when you talk about values, it sounds like something desirable, like I said before, and it's something we all have. But we also talk about when things get complicated, and when is this? So our values have also something to do how we see the world, or how we want to perceive what's happening around us. And it creates expectations, and sometimes some of our values might not be met. Like I did a group today in the morning, and there were some volunteers who just arrived on the field and were not prepared for let's say the misery that they experienced, and we're super angry how these things can happen right under our nose, let's say. And so it's one of these things where the expectations are not met, or this is making us uncomfortable. And you might know, I just thought about that talking about Christmas, and I don't know how it was for some of you, but coming together with the whole family, maybe you have to discuss with people that you actually like about things you don't like. So this might get complicated as well. If my aunt, my mother, my friends say things that I find repulsive or morally wrong, then this creates a very unpleasant feeling for myself. Or if people are acting against our values, when right now there's a big issue in Germany where I'm living, is that people refuse to get vaccinated and things with the whole pandemic, it get out of hand, and then it's really hard to not judge people because they are acting against the values that I and other people have. And sometimes we find ourselves in situations where we can't meet our moral standards. It's again something from the group today where people were talking about going on distribution and not having enough shoes or jackets for everybody who they are doing distributions with, and you actually want to share with everybody or be there and support, but you just can't because there is a limit to the material, for example. Or sometimes we do things that are not working with our self-image, with what we think would be the right thing to do, even though we do it sometimes. If we argue with friends, if we say something we don't mean, if we are mean, something like that. And that's it's getting complicated. And what comes out of this is something called cognitive dissonance. So far, everything all right? Do you understand what we are going for? All right. I will bother you with asking this because I really I like this to be participative, but I understand in the beginning it's more about listening, but we are coming to the part where you get to do some work to yourself. Because like this exercise what I was talking about in the beginning, it's called getting to know my values. So you don't get to know my values, but you get to know your own. And here are some questions, and I would like to give you, like, for everybody to take like 15 minutes time, to take a pen and pencil and answer these questions to yourself. I would say we all switch off the camera so you can work in peace and go through these questions. There is no right or wrong answers. It's just something I would like to start, so you get in touch with your values. Like I said before, this is something I don't want anybody to share afterwards. It's just for yourself, a little work on reflection. But what I want to discuss afterwards is how the exercise was going, not so much the content of the questions or the answers to the questions, but yeah, we will see then. So it's 3:30 now, and we will get back to the presentation at 3:45. All right, have fun. See you soon. Okay. Um, everybody back on track.
Yup.
Yes, nice. All right. So how do you feel? How did you experience this exercise? This is now the discussion part, and I would really love to hear about your experiences.
I can just broke the glass and the ice, sorry, and say that for me it was kind of interesting because it's a thing that sometimes I was reflecting about, and I didn't have so much vocabulary. So, for example, I had to like Google
Mm-hmm.
it to find like a list, and
Mm-hmm.
then that helped me to navigate what's like navigate something that I feel, but I didn't have the right vocabulary for that. So that was really interesting.
Mm-hmm. So did you do it in English and you needed the vocabulary, or was it hard to name it in your own language?
And no, I mean, like, I don't really struggle with English. It was more like to name it, like to name a
Mm-hmm.
feeling or to name, in this case, a value,
Okay.
Like, yeah, to
Mm-hmm.
find a correlation between what I feel and what I think and like a specific word, for
Mm-hmm.
example.
Okay. Yeah. Um, let's collect other experiences. Who else wants to share how they felt about it, or did you made similar experience?
Well, for me, it was an interesting exercise to start thinking about the maybe like the disagreements and the conflicts and the contradictions that I will have to face in the near future. For example, when I go back home after being 3 months in the field, going back home, meeting my family and my friends, and just probably going back to values, conversations, and ideas which with I used to feel uncomfortable, but maybe in a passive way, and now I'm more aware of this uneasiness that those values produce and how they affect me. And let's see how well reactions come out of that, and to try to be as like constructive as possible. We'll see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you're expecting things to get difficult when you, with the experiences you made on the field, when you go back to like the life you had before as a changed person.
Yes, I feel that the time here, even though it hasn't been so long, it has transformed me a lot. So
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Who else wants to to share with us what did you experience doing the exercise? For whom was it easy to answer these questions?
Um, sorry. I didn't find it or I found it interesting, like kind of to dig a bit deeper, to not only have it in kind of on the surface words, or like, yeah, but kind of to and not to get repetitive in these questions, because I mean kind of inter they kind of interwoven. So and then to kind of be like, okay, but what is it I really want to, for example, in the question, I don't know, what do I want my life to stand for, or kind of these questions, to not only have it on on the surface, kind of to scratch on it. That was interesting too, and as well the process of writing them down, not only kind of thinking about them. So I like that task, and I think my feeling was a mixture of being a bit like re-empowered of like, yeah, that's what I want to go for, and that's the but as well frustration about that, writing this down and having these values and so many people having these similar values getting criminalized, and that it's kind of such an exception, and that it's seen as this, oh wow, these people are doing something, but actually it's so frustrating that there's so much counter, there's so much against it, kind of, and that it's so
Okay, so like this part of there's no right in the wrong living, and it's making it hard. How do you feel about this? Is it like, is this fueling your drive to exercise your values, or is it is the frustration too much?
No, it's rather fueling it.
Okay. Who of you, when you look at what you wrote down, how does it make you feel about yourself? Do you see, are there things that that are more a secret, or is this something that you could go about to other people? So how do you feel once you're reading your answers to these questions?
When writing them down, I asked myself how much I'm actually putting into practice my values. I mean, to a certain extent I am, but I think I gathered that I could do so much more to be in line with my values. So that's the first feeling I had.
Okay. So, and what makes it hard to be in line with your values? Is it yourself, or is it more the circumstances you live in, or what is it?
For me, I guess a little bit of both. Maybe actually there's no. I mean, for some values, it is the circumstances. For others, there's no real obstacle, I guess.
Yeah. And still, it's hard sometimes to be in line with the values. Yeah. What about the others? Do you want to share, or would you? It's not. Nobody has to if you don't want to, but I'm really happy to hear different inputs.
Maybe what I had the experience when I was going through all these questions and like picturing these values in my mind, it was something really was a bit strange, like something standing very far apart from me. It was a bit like, I don't know, like someone makes a movie about you and then you watch the movie, but that's not me. Like that's some story that someone made about me, and it seemed to me like this story that I have about myself, these values that I have, how I should live, how I want to live, and sometimes I live up to them very well, sometimes not. But it didn't seem so much a part of me. It was more like, I don't know, some kind of like narrative or like story in my mind, like when you go through a book with pictures, I don't know, for children.
Okay, so it's a bit distanced from yourself. Yeah. I really like your input. It's super interesting, and I thank you a lot for sharing and for going in the same direction that I wanted to go. So we're kind of on the same page. Like this we talked about it's hard to find words, or sometimes we are in circumstances or in situations where we can live up to our values, or fulfill needs or desirable actions that we usually can't in our other life or in our old life. And this is doing something to us. And then I heard these that some people are frustrated because it's not possible to completely live up to your values, or that it's that there are no actual obstacles that withhold you from living up to or to be in line with your values, but still it's hard sometimes. And it's a funny thing, and yeah, I will lean myself out of the window by saying, in this small group that we are having here, that we're meeting, and now I use a word that might not fit so well, but in lack of a better vocabulary, within an activist scene, there's high moral standards. Let's say you have, because it's about solidarity, it's about supporting people in need, it's about not putting yourself first, but the greater good or the community. And something that I find a lot within political active people from, let's say, broadly left wing, you will always find situations where it seems that you can do better. And so this is like Momo said, fueling to strive for fulfillment of the values, and at the same time it can be frustrating because it feels like it's not reachable. This is something that also creates the cognitive dissonance that I was talking about earlier, and that I will explain to you more detailed in the next part. And also you experience that even though you know what you're thinking about, you know what your life should stand for, you know what you value, sometimes it's hard to put it in one word or in one sentence, because it's more of a feeling. It's more something that comes from the heart, let's say, and it's not something that you wake up in the morning and you know exactly what your values are and why you go about your life the way you do it. Something that's very deeply under the water, let's say. It's like an iceberg, and you see just part of the surface, and the bigger part is underwater and not visible. Okay. So any questions so far on that, or are you good for now? Or anything, anybody wants to add something? All right. This is also something you can, of course, go into more detail with these questions later by yourself, to use this as something to reflect if you want to. And I wanted to ask, who of you likes exciting activities? Like something that's thrilling, something that gives you sensation.
Me?
Yeah, all right. And is this maybe also something that motivated you to go and volunteer for No Name Kitchen?
Yeah, in part, probably that was pushing.
Mm-hmm. yeah, we had the reflective part, and I really I don't want to want anybody to feel bad, but I think this is also a part that that is important to keep in mind. We have our values, and especially a lot of values go towards community or towards something like a greater good, or like we learned before, a lot of values are learned or created by society, by our peers, by the community we live in, because this helps us to live as social human beings, which is a super important part of how we are going about life. And saying, but I don't want my life to be boring. I want to experience interesting things. I want to have some action in my life. How does this sound to you?
I guess in a way, maybe to a typically very moral person, it would sound very immoral in a way. It's just like hedonism. It's not like a very good morality in a way. It's just like the basics. I mean, it's also of course like an ethic or a moral, but some people consider it as the most basic thing. Where some people would say even for this oh, you don't have any ethics, you don't have any morals, you just like to have fun.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on that?
I mean, I will say that when you do any kind of humanitarian action, the this feeling of excitement, or I don't know if I want to call it excitement, but for sure there's it's there and it's present, it makes you feel. It's also you're in a power structure that makes you feel powerful in a way. And I think this is you, in no way this thing can be completely put at zero. You cannot delete it, but you have to keep it in mind. You have to start yeah, as you say, you have to keep it in mind. And I also think that our brain follows and search for dopamine, so it's also human trying to not do something boring. But I think the important part is to work on it, to I think the first, when you start thinking about it, and for me it was years ago, the first feeling was guilt, a very strong guilt of feeling guilty, because okay, so I'm doing this for myself, not for others. And you have to do a lot of self work to really understand why you're doing this, and how you can do it at your best, to have keep these things in mind, and to create the least to hurt people in the least way, in the smallest way possible, because there's always something that at one point you will do it wrong. You're not perfect, but yeah, so that's my take.
I also wanted to say about this when you brought this up. I don't know if this was the direction you were heading for, but I remember, for example, that one time a long time ago, we were having a COVID meeting in the team, and we're talking about stricter measures for COVID. And then we were okay, we're not going to go into squads anymore. We can't spend so much time with the people because of the spread of the pandemic. And then one person just said very naively, but very truthfully, yeah, because a lot of people were talking about before how nice it was to spend time with the people. And he said, oh, but I also would like to have this experience. And then I was thinking first in my mind, I was very judgy. I was well, is that what we're here for, to have a nice experience? And it was very conflicting with other values, like the value maybe of care for other people, that this should be more about. But yeah, this also got me thinking about this, that I mean, I wouldn't have thought so much about it if it hadn't also been something in my mind, that I was oh, maybe this is also a value that I'm pursuing here, having a nice experience, which sounds very horrible, in these circumstances.
I really agree with this, because it's something that also happened to me. So I really like this point, and that you brought it up. Thanks.
And then it's interesting again. So, other question: what's bad about wanting to have fun?
Well, I will say that it's not bad wanting to have fun. It's bad when you think you will have fun where there are people suffering around you. And you're having fun, you know, like that's for example, I do remember like when I was in the field so some years ago, like we were a few people, and one night after our shift we got drunk, you know, we were like 4 people in the house, we just got drunk, and then we felt very guilty because we were like, okay, we are here laughing, eating with a roof, you know, like having fun, and we just came back from the field, so what the hell. But I think that's when you realize that you have to start to create boundaries and to create, like, you know, professional time and like personal time, because if not, you're just gonna be overwhelmed and also like probably go towards a burnout.
And yeah, it is super important to have fun, and I do value that a lot. And for example, I know this feeling, and I think this is something we need to address, and that's something where that stems where a lot of internal conflicts and psychological problems might stem from is I have this set of values that are desirable, and everybody can agree on that. But like everybody likes somebody who can laugh about themselves. Everybody, it's also a desirable character trait, at least in the communities that I move around, that you're a funny person to be with, right? And enjoying oneself, or taking breaks and doing self-care is something somehow is not as highly valued maybe as other things, or we don't talk about this to others because it seems egoistic, and then we get into a conflict, right? And this is something that we talked about values, and that's a very difficult concept to grasp, as you also experienced doing the exercise. But this is not all that we have. We have our values, but we have also other needs. And this is what I want to get into now. And I'm really thankful for the discussion, and I hope we can keep this up during the rest of the workshop. So thank you very much for your input, and let's see what we develop together. Talking about basic psychological needs. This is I don't know, some of you might know it because I always bring it up in the workshops, because I really like it as it's a very simple model that in my opinion explains a lot. But it also got some justified criticism. But I will explain how Maslow, the guy who created this model, meant it, or what I understood about it, and then get into the critics. So this pyramid is supposed to be read from bottom to top. So you have on the bottom you have the basic physiological needs like air, food, water, shelter, clothing. They put reproduction in there. It's about the sex drive, which is also viewed as a physiological basic need. And once these needs are met, you can move on to the next level, and so on and so on. So they get, let's say, more sophisticated the further you go up in the pyramid. And you might all know this from your personal experiences. You might be working on your friendships or on the sense of connection that you have. So you're on this love and belonging level. And throughout the day, you get thirsty, you get hungry, and at some point, the need for food is more important than anything else. So you need to go to the lower level need to fulfill this in order to take care of the other things. So it's not that you, once you have food, shelter, air, sleep, and everything like supplied, you move up, and then throughout life you get to the top of the pyramid, but it's very fluid and you go up and down all the time. So this is a very simple example. Another one is if you are working on your career or working on your freedom, on your esteem, like on this the green level, and you have relationship troubles. These are much more present and need to be tended to than the other things. And I guess all of you can relate to that. So this is how this model is meant. Do you understand what I was going for? Do you have any questions on that? Okay. Yeah, and then let's talk about the criticism. Do you have any, when you understood this model, or do you, after my explanations, is there something coming to your mind where you think, well, not so fast, Fabian. This is not how I see the world, how my needs are working. Do you have any criticism on this, or where do you think this model lacks?
Yeah, maybe sometimes this order is not so linear that needs can jump. Like, I don't know, some reporter is super like into self-actualization and really wants to make this report about a war conflict or whatever, and then travels to this war zone, basically like putting the need for self-actualization over his safety needs. Or someone like is painting, I don't know, Michelangelo is painting the Sistine Chapel for days and days without eating and things like those. Where maybe like you can't completely circumpass the eating, but at least you can jump a little upwards and skip it sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts or additions?
I mean, I'm not sure if the like some guys who go to the word field is self-actualization, or also Michelangelo who would like work 6 days on a row. Like I'm not sure if I will call it self-actualization. I think self-actualization is more like a process, like a long-term process. It's not just like yeah. Pretty sure Michelangelo was also neurodivergent, and he had like a strong ADHD, and that's why he was like working so much, because he was hyper fixated. But that's another story.
Or he was afraid to be punished to death by the Pope. It's also a big part of working with these kind of organization, I guess, back in these days. Anyway, you both had very good inputs, and this is something I really like about psychological models, and what I really hate about them at the same time. It's back when I was in university, at some point I started to joke with my friends that whenever we started a new course or something, we were like, will it be a pyramid, will it be a circle, or will it be like a flow chart? Because most of the psychological models are like that. It's either going in a circle, or it's going on a pyramid, or it's a flow chart that things are connected with each other. Why are we psychologists doing this? It's because it's easy on the eye, it's easy to understand, and there stems like this problem of psychology is it wants to be a science. And it's also looking at that works with statistical methods and needs a lot of data from different individuals to create like scientific proof. and you're talking about the individual. So with all these models, the greatest thing that you can always say is, well, if this is not exactly working for you as an individual, it's because we always have to take into account that we are different. And then you are home free from any criticism. So some of you might notice that have a little sarcastic undertone in my voice. It's because, yeah, this is like nobody's perfect, even these models are not. And what you said before, the words are, of course, again, very open to interpretation, and it's possible to jump between the levels, of course, and also to neglect the level in order to achieve something on a different level. And when you talk about, I don't know, some people put themselves in danger, like in life danger, in order to protect their family, or people are in toxic relationships because they need the intimacy and stuff like that. So this is all happening, and makes these models a bit open to criticism, of course. But even though there's a lot to criticize, I think it's something important to keep in mind that it's really hard to take care of other levels, like, and this is something you might have encountered in the work on the field, and kind of build connections with the people on the move. And what we talked about in the beginning, this was also something I hear from the groups. Sometimes people say, we are not sure who we can trust. People are living in camps and they still ask us for donations. And then you feel that this, let's call it friendship, is betrayed. But understanding that somebody who might share the same values, if they were in a different situation, taking care of themselves first, is something that you can understand, and it's violating your value of solidarity or friendship. But just because a person acts this way doesn't necessarily mean that they don't have any values or are doing something morally wrong, because there are situations where it's you don't have much choice. Do you understand what I was going for? Sometimes I get carried away with my explanations, and then I'm not sure if I know what I was thinking about, but I don't know if I get it across. So just ask if it's getting complicated. All right. Good thing is there is, of course, another model of basic psychological needs that's, as you can see, a bit newer. And what I like about this model, and that's why I put it in here, is these things. That's why I put it in that way. Are these 4 needs: orientation and control, enhancement and protection of the self-esteem, the need for attachment, and the need for pleasure gain and displeasure avoidance are equal to one another. And another thing is that it's this 5th need is of coherence and consistency. So we kind of float around on this. If you would see these 4 basic needs as fields, and the coherence and consistency as a boat, for example, that's sailing around on these 4 things, on these 4 needs. Because sometimes, let's say, we talked about having fun and having pleasure, finding pleasure in getting into new situations and meeting new people and going into a exciting work environment like on the field. This is maybe also satisfying your need for pleasure gain. And at the same time, you put your need for orientation and control in danger. So I don't know if you can recall the first day you were on the field and maybe you felt insecure or dependent on the others or helpless. But at the same time, maybe you were thrilled to have something new going, and you were happy that you started to be there. Can you relate to this example? What I wrote down in red under these basic needs is what kind of feelings of deficiency you might experience when these basic needs are not met. So if your need for attachment is not met, you might feel lonely or marginalized. If your need for pleasure or for displeasure avoidance is not met, you feel stressed or bored or tired, and and so on. I guess I don't have to read this out to you. Do you have any questions on that connection between the needs and maybe these feelings of deficiency, or any thoughts on that?
So I have one question. So it's more meant like these 4 levels are tried to kept up at the same time. So instead of this pyramid of one layer, next layer, it's like at the same time meant, right?
Yeah, they are kind of equal to each other. Let's see. I tried to find an example from one of you've all been in teams with No Name Kitchen on the field, and so you kind of have this need of if you like the people you are in the team with and you're living with in the house, you have this feeling of attachment satisfied, right? And let's say you're the person who likes to cook, and you value or you take pride in your ability to cook nice dishes for a lot of people, and if by doing so you are protecting or sometimes even enhancing your self-esteem as well. And like we discussed before, you're on the field, you're having fun, this is something you wanted to do, this is how you gain pleasure through excitement and meeting new people and doing something that concurs with your values. And also, I don't know, let's say back home you would have to work in a boring job or go to university or write thesis or whatever, so you avoid the displeasure of doing that. And after some time on the field, you also know your way around the town, your way around the squad and in the house, and so this feeling of orientation control is also met. But in the beginning, it might not have been this way. You were new, you didn't know the people, so you might not feel that attached. You didn't find the right cooking supply. You were still in your head with a lot of things from university or your job, for example, and you didn't know shit about the group and about the surroundings. So this was super imbalanced and not satisfied. And for most, if you think back about your first days, the first time you were on the field, most time we try to if one or two or maybe three or all of the basic needs are not actually met or are not satisfied, we try to focus on one thing that we are good at. For example, if I would go to the field and I would say I'm a good cook, I will try to get to know the kitchen. So I have something where I not actually enhance my self-esteem, but where I can find orientation and control, because pens and cookers are working the same way everywhere, for example. Do you have any examples, or do you remember something that you did in the beginning when you might, or who of you did feel a bit lost once you started being on the field? Or was it all smooth sailing from the beginning?
I mean, if I recall well, my first time, because it was some years ago, yeah, I was completely lost the first day. You know, like you just see all the people that are like your coworker or whatever you want to call them, like your buddies that like they know what to do, they know where to put their hands, they're like doing stuff, and then you feel so like useless. Like you really feel like, okay, there is so much I have to learn, and I don't know if I will be able to do that. And you know that you have to be quick, that you don't want to like waste time or to make mistakes. And at the same time, if it's your first time in the field, you're in a completely new environment and situation with a lot of dynamics that you never witnessed or not even studied before, you know. So it's like a lot of inputs. I was very young, and I do remember that like I spent, I think, like the first, like my very, very first time, I think I spent like the first whole day sit kind of far away just looking, because I needed to like try to understand some dynamics before feeling comfortable enough to like actually doing something, you know. But I mean, on the other part, I know that I was really, really young, and I was definitely not prepared for the field. And so I also put like, I don't think this is like the most common, or I mean, I hope that it's not the most common feeling and sensation of the first day. But yes, I do remember that also like the second time when I went to shed, a bit more than when I went to shed. The first, maybe not the whole first day, but the first hours, you feel pretty useless because you don't know what to do.
So from looking at these feelings of deficiency, what I understood from your story is you felt in the beginning a bit helpless and dependent, maybe.
Yeah, sure.
Or and okay, so if I'm allowed to ask, what did you do to make these unpleasant feelings go away? You said you were sitting around looking at the dynamics. What else did you do?
Yeah, I think I cope with like trying to understand what other people do and what are the dynamics out there. And then like when I grasp them a little bit, I feel comfortable enough to like, you know, join the group. And I mean, of course, if there's a group working and they're telling me like, okay, come here and do this, of course, that then it's way easier. But sometimes you arrive like in the end of a work day, for example, or like where in an emergency moment, so you cannot really do anything, you know, because like it's better sometimes for me at least sit down apart and watching and understand before doing something by your, you know, if you're not supported in that moment from someone, it's better like just take time and trying to understand before acting.
Yeah, and this is something that's really amazing and super nice that you shared this, because like this is meeting the model actually. So you had these feelings of deficiency, of being insecure or helpless, and what you did, you try to find out, to orientate yourself and get a sense of control of the situations by observing how people are who already have experience and have control and orientation in the situation, how they are behaving. So this is something that happens a lot. That, of course, when I feel lonely, I call my friends, for example, so that I get this sense of attachment. Or if I don't know my way around and I feel trapped in I don't know. When I move to a new city and I feel trapped because I don't know where to go and what to do, I start to explore. Or if the next lockdown is coming and I feel bored, I do something that I like, and we find things to do. So, looking at this, we already have a lot of coping mechanisms to make these unpleasant feelings of deficiency go away, that meet our unmet basic needs. And then you might ask yourself, so when we already do this by ourselves, why are we talking about this? Again, I really like to let's say, to label things, or to make this connection between, this is how I felt in the beginning, there was a lack of something, and I can make this go away. Because in other situations, you can prepare yourself for this. So when you know, I'm going into a situation where I'm lacking control, or when we talk about self-esteem or pleasure gain, this is something that also connected to the values that we might have. When we reflect about this, we can prepare ourselves for coping, or how to deal with these unpleasant feelings in a faster way. And I think this is also what happened to a lot of people when they, like, the first time you go to the field, it's all new, and you need to find your way around. And then the next time, you know that this is going to happen, and you already have an idea on how to cope with this. All right. Any other questions or thoughts on the basic needs? So we talked a bit about values and where they come from, and that they put us in a position where talking about values and writing down about values is also something where we go about how we want to see ourselves, and where we want to go. So it's also driving us to develop ourselves, or to develop ourselves in a way that is according to our values. And so also we talked about these feelings of it's hard to be in line with the values, and that makes us maybe frustrated or sad, and but it's also driving us to trying to get in line with our values. So this is something that keeps us going, and it's also dangerous a little bit to because if we don't accept that we can't be perfect or always be in line with our values, then we are prone to develop psychological problems. And why is this happening? Is, like I said before, cognitive dissonance. And now I want to I mentioned that term so many times, I want to explain it to you. First, I need to drink, because otherwise I won't be able to talk anymore. So, I like to tell stories, and while preparing for this workshop, I found that regarding cognitive dissonance, a term that just was defined much later in psychology, this is something that was part of culture in a lot of countries, in a lot of eras. And I brought to you like this little poem I want to read. It goes like this. As you can see in the picture, this fox has a longing for grapes. He jumps, but the bunch still escapes. So he goes away sour, and this set to this hour declares that he has no taste for grapes. what happens is the fox sees these grapes, wants to eat them, can't reach them, and kind of has to admit to failure, which is not what I can only assume the fox likes to see about himself. And so this creates cognitive dissonance. So he perceives contradicting informations. There are nice grapes that I want to have, but I can't reach them. So this is unpleasant. And is, of course, just simple fox's life, and our well-developed human minds have a lot more going for us than just grapes, and also actions, feelings, ideas, beliefs, and values about our environment. And yeah, we might have this psychological stress when we talk about this. Is when I asked about do you want to have fun, or do you find pleasure in doing the work, and how is this according to solidarity, for example, or what we talked about earlier, that of course we can have fun doing work, but we shouldn't get this example of having a party and drinking and feeling guilty about having this opportunity while other people are suffering. And this, what resulted in guilt was also cognitive dissonance, because you had these contradicting informations going on for you. Any questions so far on the definition, or do you understand what I'm going for? Okay, so back to the fox. So this fox doesn't reach the grapes, and it kind of makes him feel helpless. This creates a cognitive dissonance, and what he does, instead of admitting to his failure, which would make him feel helpless and also not concur with his self-image, I presume, the fox rationalizes and just goes away and dismisses the grapes as undesirable to create, to restore the cognitive harmony. It is something that happens a lot, and we're not putting too much effort into that. So maybe you know that from your own life or from your own experiences, that, I don't know, you wanted something really bad, and then you save your money to buy a new, I don't know, phone, a new laptop, new clothes or something, and then and you value them, or like you appreciate them a lot, because there goes a lot of work and effort into saving up the money to get it. And a week after you got whatever you desired, it's on sale and just half the price. And maybe then you feel betrayed, but you can restore the cognitive harmony by saying, well, but I worked really hard for this, so I earned this, and it's a special piece of possession, for example. Do you know examples from your own life, or do you want to share something where you felt like the fox and got out of it by creating harmony, to restore harmony? Or are you confused? This is also an option.
No, maybe, I don't know. Maybe in Germany, I care really much about the COVID restriction and about keeping the pandemic down. And then I get to Bosnia, where like there are almost basically no restrictions about COVID, and I'm really stressed after the workday. And in Germany, like I wouldn't go to the bar with lots of unvaccinated people. But then like I go, and then afterwards, maybe I rationalized, maybe the pandemic is not so bad as I thought in my mind. Maybe I guess I shouldn't beat myself up about the restrictions so much. Maybe it's, I mean, if it's a people's choice if they want to like to the hygiene stuff or not. Whereas in Germany, maybe I would have been like before, well, no, we need to protect them anyway. We shouldn't do it.
That's a great example. I remember last year when I went to a demonstration with and met a friend, and I was like, "Yeah, man, we were wearing masks and everything." And we were like, "I don't know if I don't feel so comfortable." And he was just like, "Yeah, we will find out in 2 weeks if we got it or not, if it was a stupid thing to do." And this is this typical. I had the experience of cognitive dissonance because I wanted to take part in this demonstration, but I also didn't want to get infected and infect others. And he had the same thing, but dismissed the psychological stress by just saying, "Well, I will find out sometime," and that's it. Any questions on that, or something? Some other thoughts you have on that so far? Nope. Okay. We did a lot of input so far. What do you think about a small break?
I would love it.
10 minutes? Yeah, because I really need to go to the bathroom as well. Even if you didn't want like to have the break, I would dismiss this by playing my moderation card and saying we see each other in 10 minutes. So 10 to 5 back at the computer. All right. Enjoy your break.
Okay. Thank you, Fabian.
All right. Everybody back. Hope you enjoyed your break. Just give me a small sign that you are there, so I
Here and
know.
alive.
Back again.
Nice. Yoo-hoo! Nice seeing you. Sergey, is this you? As
Who? I don't know who you mean.
Hi, I'm Silvia. I was in Shid
Hi.
for these holidays. Hi.
Ah, nice. All right. Okay. Welcome to the workshop. Okay. So far we talked. Yeah.
Sorry.
On.
I will follow a live.
Yeah. We also
I have to Thank you.
started to record this session or this workshop, so you can catch up on the first part later on if you want to. So before the break, we talked about in the beginning what are values. We did a little exercise where you got to know your values. We argued about some moral conflicts that might stem from having conflicting values within ourselves that creates cognitive dissonance, which was last part, and in between we talked about basic psychological needs. Okay. What I want to go for next is talking about emotional reactions. That we already do this. We do this all the time. And I want to talk about, we talked a lot about unmet needs or unmet desires, or the whole workshop is called When Values Collide, because it's not about when things go smooth, because you don't need a workshop for that. It's going about when things are not going according to plan. And I really like these two pictures to visualize this. So a lot of times we set a goal and then we have a plan and we're like, okay, I'm here on my bike and I want to get to this little flag, and then I just go. This is the plan. And as soon as our plan meets reality, there are difficulties, setbacks. We need to have breaks, go to checkpoints. Maybe the bike's breaking down, and so on and so on. And most times things are not going according to plan. And most times this is not because our plan was bad, but it's more about that reality holds barriers for us, or things, let's say, things just happen. And that might lead to emotional reactions. Again, we are talking about when values collide, or when things get complicated, or when we have conflict. So I talk about unpleasant emotional reactions, and I give you some examples for that. So we react with stress, or have stress as an emotional reaction when an important personal goal is threatened. What does this mean? I set a goal for myself, and okay, this part I will do with simple examples, and I hope they don't get too simple. But let's say I want to buy bread, and because I still have to work, my personal and important goal to get bread is threatened because the bakery will close down and I still have to sit at the desk. So I get stressed. or I finished work on time and I took the train to get this awesome bread from the bakery, and then the train just stops somewhere in the tracks and I can't get off. Then I get stressed, for example. We react with fear or anxiety if an important goal is threatened and I'm not sure if I can fend off the threat. So to stay with my bread example, I finally get off the train in time, but there's, let's say, a group of wild dogs standing on the street, and it's the only street that leads to that bakery, and I'm not sure if I can deal with these wild dogs that are standing in my way. And so I might experience, or I will experience fear or anxiety. With anger, that happens, someone is blocking me from reaching my goal or something. So again, with the little story of my awesome bread, a person comes out of one of the houses and apparently is talking to the dogs, and they listen to his command, and I ask him or her to let me pass and call his dogs away from the street. And the person would just be saying like, no, they stay here and you can get your bread elsewhere. I get angry because he's blocking me from reaching that goal. Next thing that happens is it's a real emotional roller coaster that on that story. Out of my anger, I go to that person and I knock him down. He falls and bleeds from the nose. And this is something, I broke a social norm. It's not okay to hit somebody, and now I expect negative consequences because the person is calling the police. And I feel guilty because I violated important moral standards for myself, that I'm a pacifist, and I hold it I think it's very important, it's a high moral standard to me not to be violent to another person. Yeah. And then in the end, I get to the bakery is closed, and they have a sign in the window that says it was the last day of business and they will never bake bread again. And so I believe that I won't be able to reach my important goal of getting that awesome bread anytime again. And I am disappointed and experience sadness. Any questions on that? Hope this was not too, let's say, too quirky with the example, but do you get what I was going for with the emotional reactions?
Well, I have to say that I love the drawing, the graphic. I think it's absolutely great, and yeah, no, and it makes perfect sense. I remember the day before coming to the field, I almost lost the bus that was bringing me to Bosnia, because I didn't calculate the amount of traffic that there was going to be early in the morning, and I was so angry against myself, like these like super harsh thoughts against, like, and it was like, okay, emotional reaction, angerness in excess, calm down, but it's good to think about these situations with these terms. So I think it's useful. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. All right. Yeah. Any other comments or questions on that? Okay. this whole thing so far, talking about your values, or not talking about your values, but getting to know your values with the exercise, talking about cognitive dissonance, talking about psychological needs and emotional reactions was, I admit it, was all the setup, because what I really want to get into now is discuss tricky situations with you. I took some situations that I came across in the groups that I work with for Neuen Kitchen, that kind of were reoccurring. I tried to put them like very broad. And what I would like to do now is discuss with you how you feel about these situations. And I would like to go through it one after the other. So starting with the first, you're on the field and it comes to your knowledge that one of the guys who is regularly coming and asking for donations, asking for special clothes and shoes and stuff like that, it comes to your knowledge that that person is selling donations for profit to other people on the move. What do you think about this kind of situations? Did you experience something like that?
I think I experienced something close to that, not about like selling donation, but someone who like tells you a particular story, for example, to have a particular thing from you. It can be some more food, it can be some like offering a coffee or something like that, and then you get to know that that it was completely fake. And maybe it's not that someone that you never met before and just came, but it was maybe someone that you had also a relationship with for like days or weeks, and so my first instinctive reaction, then what I feel, of course, it's betrayal, because I feel that like you broke something that was between us, which was the trust. But I don't know if like overstepping saying how I resolve it with myself, but I always think that in their position, I will do even worse.
Okay. This is something that happens a lot, and I really appreciate this about all the people from Neuen Kitchen I worked with. You're always looking for solutions. This is something that comes later. It's a great trait, and it's something that keeps the whole organization going as well as it does, I guess. But I want to talk about like this kind of feeling. What happens? You say what I heard, like you feel betrayed. The trust is broken, but on the other hand, there's something like there's understanding for the situation that you would do even worse. So there's also by labeling it as bad or worse, this is also, you have a moral, some moral value is broken as well. So like the betrayal is something bad.
Yeah, of course. I value it in a moral way, definitely. Because for me, like it's funny that you said that, because like when I was writing down my values, I think one of the top one is honesty. So yeah, like I feel it like as a moral value for me to like that's not now what I do, but like my instinctive reaction in the past was just like, why didn't you tell me the truth from the beginning? I will have done the same probably, but like, why did you want to like to cheat or like to tell me a lie? So yeah, I feel it also. I feel it very personal. I don't like in the first moment, I don't understand that it's something that happens basically to everyone, but I really feel like as a wrong that someone did to myself specifically. Yeah.
Yeah. So you feel attacked as well.
Yeah.
Personally. How about the others? Did you experience something like this or similar? Yeah.
Yeah, we had this one time that in Sturridge, the people, they were not even selling the stuff to other POM, but to like just the people in the town. And it was a bit of a trick situation because they were asking for a lot of like things that a lot of people need, like good shoes and stuff. And every week we bring them very good shoes. And there's much more people in the other city, Bihać, that really need the shoes, that ask for it more. And then we see them like on the street and they're selling like 20 pairs of good shoes for probably not a very high amount of money, like just to make some quick money. And yeah, the first thing, it was more uncomfortable for me because I realized that for me it's nicer in a way to give to the people, and this is like a harder responsibility now to go to the next time and say, hey, like we saw you selling stuff on the street, and this time we can't give you all the things you asked for because if you do this, like the other people get way less stuff, and it doesn't like meet our values of caring equally for the people here. So it was like a bit uncomfortable having to that those values collide, like wanting to just like feel good and personally care for the people you're arriving, but this value being violated by having to say no to someone because of like a higher value.
Did you realize? Did you judge these people for their actions at some point? Maybe when you found out in the first moment.
At first, yeah. I mean, I wasn't judging them in comparison to me, I guess, because I was also thinking this, like, I don't know what I would do in the situation, but I was kind of judging in comparison to like other people in the town that you know very well over the months. You're thinking like, well, my other friends from Discord, they would never have done this, and thinking in this way, sort of, yeah. But then I guess it's all very shaped by the situation. What I thought about later, that if you are in this privileged position that people drive to your squad and bring you the stuff, then you might more easily like this is the second thought, and you might more easily be tempted to take advantage of this than the people in the other city where they have to like they don't have the service.
Okay. So we already collected some values that were violated in here. That is honesty and equality, and also caring, taking care of others. And people get judged, you feel attacked, you feel personally attacked as well, and maybe put people, not necessarily this is something that happens, but suddenly there's a hierarchy between the good people who play by the rules and concur with your values of equality and honesty, and the egoists that just go for their personal advantage. You see, I'm polarizing, of course. It's not necessarily what you were thinking, but that's making things more interesting. To be a bit more polarizing on this part. Anybody else has any thoughts on this first situation, or maybe experienced something similar and can tell us something about their experience?
Yeah, I had as well similar encounters. The one mentioned in Sturridge where people were selling things, or as well when realizing then later on a person you brought things to is involved in the smuggling business and makes money out of that already. So it's in the hierarchical system of people on the move already quite high, and yeah, is making money from this, which I don't disagree or doubt at all, but is not really, I think, then reliant on getting the sleeping bag for free from us, for example. So, and then these moments, I rather had as well these emotions of shame or guilt in a way, not guilt, but more shame of like not not having seen it and being like, okay, as was mentioned before, these critical items that you just have a few in stock, where it's like, okay, there are really people that have no access to money. I would have much rather given the sleeping bag to this person than to a person that has access to money, even an apartment once in a while, and might even sell it on to another person. So kind of more shame for like, being maybe naive in this way, not having foreseen this, and as well, kind of not violating, but like within our own team, more to this, because when I read you have your shame, I broke a social norm. It's not like the social norm, but from our own team, kind of the one.
Okay. Thanks for sharing. And so there's, from what I heard, like if you personally attack, then maybe react angry to that person in the situation, but also are disappointed by yourself, by the person as well, or and also that does something how you feel towards yourself. Anybody else wants to add something to the first situation?
Yeah, I like to share a new situation and to comment on the other ones.
Is this related to this this kind of first thing that happened, or
no,
just go for it?
Okay. Yeah, no, I'm just thinking about what happened yesterday night when we went out for dinner to a squad where some friends are living, and well, when we came out of the dinner, there was these other guys, these Alibabas, who were like going to our friends' squad and rob them, and it was like a really tricky situation, because at the same time we knew who the Alibabas was, and we we're assisting them, obviously, with showers, with distros, and then it was really like first well, it really kind of put me in the spot to say like, okay, so tomorrow we go to the other guy's house and we keep on doing what we do, and we just like say nothing of what's, I don't know, it was really tricky. I think obviously, it's obviously tricky, but I am a little bit like shaken and confused by it, and just wanted to share it with you.
Yeah, that's something that happens when like you build trust to somebody, and if people that you kind of let into your life, let's say, violate your values, even though if they are not doing harm to you directly, this might shake us to the core, right? Because it's not about you yourself, or but it's also when our values are violated, or if we experience something like that, we are really fast in questioning more things about the environment we are experiencing, what happened, or about that person. And if somebody, I don't know if it's not necessarily talking about situations on the field, but if a friend or somebody you like or does something that seems immoral or wrong to you, and it's just, let's say, a small action, a lot of times we find ourselves questioning that person's character, or if ourselves and our ability to to judge people or to deal with people. I'd like to go, like, this was actually planned to do in breakout sessions and like to have you discuss one by like 2 by 2, but this is not working on this platform, so we do it in the group. And what I would like to go through the situations and then like collect the whole thing and talk about that afterwards. But so if there's no other comment to the first situation, I'd like to move on to the second one, but I give you the room to comment on the first situation before we do that. Anything else regarding to people taking advantage and selling donations, for example? Okay, so moving on to the second situation. Let's say you treated somebody's wounds after a violent pushback, and that person keeps coming back to you asking for painkillers, for stronger painkillers, and for alcoholic beverages to help them sleep. How did anybody experience something like that on the field?
I did.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. How does it make you feel reliving this or thinking about this?
I don't know, like, I mean, the painkillers we have, or I was in contact with, were not so severe. So, I mean, yeah, so I handed out painkillers. I didn't have a moral conflict there, I'd say. It was more, just to edit on that, it was more sometimes we had discussions on when people would go on game and ask for painkillers, because hiking 2 or 3 weeks and in shitty shoes and through the wilderness, through the bushes, is going to be hurtful for the feet. So in order to to basically numb yourself, people would take painkillers, kind of preventively, or not preventively, but yeah. So this would sometimes cause discussions. And I can see there both sides, but in this case, I wouldn't. But I'm interested in other opinions or stories.
Okay.
Yeah,
What
also for
else?
me,
Yeah,
it didn't impact so much. Like, again, I think for me, like, I mean, not in this case where like, if people don't have wounds but ask you for like painkillers or like stronger medicinals, or stronger drugs, and like, I'm like, yeah, okay, you're lying, but, and of course I give a judgment, but beside that, it doesn't really impact me as other things.
Mm-hmm. And what, this is open for the whole group. How do you feel about the situation like this? How would you react? What would you do? Would you give out painkillers? Or what are your thoughts? What would you think would the person do with this? Or putting it a bit more direct, do you think it's the right thing to give somebody who asks for strong painkillers to help them sleep, to give them this medicine?
I mean, are you asking if it's like ethical for me, or like not for me, but like for us, if it's like moral to do it? Well, I'm waiting for the others. If not, I can answer. Not waiting. I just want to give space.
Yeah. No, that's nice. Anybody has an idea on that? Go ahead, don't be shy. So who of you would give out strong painkillers to somebody asking for that?
I mean, it depends for me a lot about the guidelines that we have inside the group for like the distribution of medicinals, because I don't know how things are now, but like a few times ago it was really controversial because like for example, when I was in Serbia, the police was really controlling that for a while. So I think that like it depends a lot what the group decided, and it depends what you mean for painkillers. Because like for me, for example, I won't feel comfortable to give strong medicinals just because I don't know if people can have a counter reaction to that. So I won't feel safe since I'm not a doctor, neither nor a nurse to do that. But to give like paracetamol or anything else I can give, and I know that it don't like it's like the probability to have a negative or reverse effect are really few. I don't feel guilty for doing that. I think I'm just helping out, honestly. So, but this is my very personal opinion, and again, like that will depend a lot of what we decide as a group.
Again, there are two. There you want to help on the one hand, and on the other hand, you don't want to break rules of the group.
No, yeah, I think that's very important for me, for example, like you can really get in serious troubles because you're, handing off medicinals. So yeah, that will be my only thing.
So it's also a bit thing of taking care of yourself and not getting into trouble with the law.
Me and the group overall, because like if they catch me giving out medicinals, okay, maybe I got like a DASPO, like I got to get out of the country, but like the negative effects, like the police control and wherever, will go back to the organization and just on me personally. So there's different levels. Like I don't really care if I cannot enter in Bosnia and in Serbia for 5 years. I more care that nobody else or a bigger organization suffer for me doing something that I should not have done.
Okay. It's a tricky one, apparently. Like it's we talked about betrayal, feeling bad about being lied to, maybe, or and also seeing somebody in pain, not wanting to endanger the movement or the group, and also wanting to help. So there's a lot of things coming together. If there is no other input from you guys, I would move on to the next one. But of course, feel free to participate and share your opinion on the situation. All right. So moving on to the third situation, you kind of have build a friendship, a nice relationship, trustful relationship with somebody in the squad, for example, over sharing tea and food, and then after spending more time, the person starts making or repeatedly makes sexist statements about you and or fellow volunteers. How do you feel about this? What do you think about this? What would you do? Did some of you experience something like that?
Yeah, I was just still in the thinking about it process because it's a very. Oh yeah, I can just start saying something now. Yeah, because I find it. Well, first of all, it's a feeling of a certain disappointment in a way, even though it's not that I expect everyone to be, in this, especially, I don't know, in the usual society, in wherever one lives back at home, it's like I anyways don't expect much from most humans regarding these topics. But so it's not like I have a higher expectation there on the field from people regarding these topics of discrimination. But I think when it's in this nice atmosphere, you are with someone and there are those hierarchies. Yeah, that it's a very, I don't know, delicate situation of like managing, I don't know, this disbalance that at least I then feel, of like, okay, I really don't like the statement. And then it's like, okay, how can I don't know, if it's like the first time, then I might be like, seem like I maybe didn't understand it or something like this. Is sometimes a mechanism like, okay, just leave it for this one sentence. But yeah, if it gets repeatedly and it's like you feel like, okay, no, then thinking like, okay, how can or how do I want to intervene now? And as well keeping the balance of in this hierarchy of like not wanting to, I don't know, over explain or make a, like if I would be here in my hometown and this happens, then I don't know, I would make a bigger deal out of it, I would say, than in this situation, which makes it a weird double standard in a way, of course. What's the question about how we feel about it or how we behaved?
Yeah.
Sorry.
How would you feel about it? How would you behave? Maybe somebody else wants to give some ideas.
I will just say how I feel, and I will add another perspective. Because I think for me it's not so abstract, like being perceived as a female or as a woman. When someone says something sexual or sexist, because usually they are very connected for me. Like not sexist. I thought about more like sexual harassment or like sexual proposal or sexual jokes. Then for me, like it's not just I feel disappointed, for example, as a Momo, but I also feel threatened, So it's like you start fearing, like you start not feeling safe, and that's fucked up. I don't know if other people felt the same, but like to me it happened that I stopped feeling so safe as before. And for sexist comment, I'm just like, yeah, whatever. Like it just it's just annoying because like, you know, that people treat you as a less than them, but that's it. Like I'm pissed, but like I'm more scared when it's about sexual thing than rather than sexist.
Mm-hmm. So there's for sexist comments, you have you build up your resilience over time and try to dismiss it, even though it's making you angry or annoying. But it sounds like you're tired of fighting that fight every time again and again.
Yeah, definitely. It's also a fight that is like everywhere, so you have to decide where to spend energy, I think. I mean, at least for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like I rather have this fight when there is some you know, sexist remarks within the volunteers than outside. Outside, and maybe I'm just gonna give like a very broad comment like, oh yeah, but you know, women can also do that, you know, just like very
Mm-hmm.
broad, not entering the discussion. Just like I think it's still important, like for me it's still important to, okay, it's a bit complicated, let me explain it. So it's still important to put a feet down, you know, and not give all the
Mm-hmm.
terrain, all the space, you know, like to have some resistance on when when people say something sexist. And at the same time, I'm a white woman with an European passport. I'm not there to lecturing anyone, and I have to remind myself that, you know, I also don't want to use this power imbalance on my favor. So I'm gonna usually just give a very broad comment, like, yeah, but you know, also women do that. Oh, I've heard this story about the fast. I don't know, like when they talk about like who's stronger. I'm just like, oh, you know, like a woman just won the Olympic for that. Just saying, you know, like just as a comment that it's not too much related, but just to like answer it back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just diving into what I was going for with this, and we can still refer to the situations, but I will go to the next slide because that, like I said before, this was supposed to be group work, and then I wanted you to share how you felt about the situations and how you experienced the discussion. And what I find very interesting, what you, Momo, and you both just said is like this double standard or choose when to do what. And that there are values of being like of equality and of honesty and fairness and friendship and stuff like that, and that these values themselves have different value depending on the situation, and that makes things difficult. So like Momo said before, in his hometown he would make more of a fuss about it, or in the group of volunteers he would put more effort into that, and then saying, I'm not here to lecture people on the move, for example. And that's now I have to disappoint you, maybe, or I don't know how your expectations were for the workshop. There is no real recipe on how to deal with these situations, how to deal with this when your values collide, because it's always for everyone, for every situation, it's different. And experiencing this feeling of double standards is something that happens a lot, because in one situation, even this might create a cognitive dissonance of knowing if I'm with my peers, I would put a lot of effort into that and discuss and argue and maybe fight. And with other people, I just dismiss it by a comment, and that might not feel right. But there are reasons for that. And so it's interesting to look at what's happening. Why is it different if you're in your usual environment and if you're on the field, for example? And this is like this last question, or talking about the first situation with somebody selling donations. What about the perspective that once you gave somebody a present, like this is like donation also, why is it called the donation and not a present? It's basically the same thing, right? You give something away somebody needs. And donation sounds like it's attached to, or it's related to that person needs to use it for themselves, and with a present it's different. But as soon as it's not in your or in the possession of the organization anymore, the person you gave it to can do with it whatever they want. But still, there's a moral conflict happening, right? So maybe the last question is the one that's most interesting. Why or what is easy and what is difficult about these situations? And why are you able to, because in all situations there were somebody saying something like, I can understand why a person is acting this way, and still you feel betrayed and attacked. And why do you think this is happening? A lot of questions, a lot of input. Take your time.
Can you just repeat the last one? Why is what happening?
Why is it happening that from what I gathered, for all the situations, the people who commented on it had some kind of understanding for the person acting against or violating your values, while still feeling betrayed or attacked or unsafe in that situation. And why is it easier to find understanding in these situations, and why is it different from being at home?
So my answer for why it's not the same when you're at home, when you're at your own place, it's again like the power imbalance that there is on the field. If you're a volunteer or a worker and there's people on the move, there's a huge power imbalance, and you cannot cancel it. So that's the difference. So yeah, I'm not gonna be harsh as much as with my friends, or my like friends of a friend, as like, for example, on online community, if you're a white European, it's not your place to tell to a black man to shut the fuck up because he's being sexist. It's not your place. Like, you can say something, but there's a power imbalance that you have to take into account.
Okay.
I think it's also just like different expectations, because if I'm at home, I'm thinking like, okay, these people have some free time, they have like the time and resources to educate themselves, and they maybe also have a different, at least I viewed, responsibility than the other people, because their actions might be affecting more, like, I don't know, actions of Germany might affect Afghanistan more than like actions in Afghanistan might affect actions in Europe. Or there's this power imbalance again, and then also just like different expectation, like maybe if someone is like grows up in a culture where they like have to do a lot of other things first, and they like completely occupied with the game the whole time, they maybe don't have the time and resources to educate themselves about these things, and that's how I think about it. But then I also don't want to be like this stupid like paternalizing thing where we're like, oh, well, you come from such a different culture, it's so hard. Oh, I guess you don't understand these European values that we have. And I think that's also really terrible. Like, if there's an opportunity to call somebody out on something, I will always do it. but maybe I guess maybe I think I do it also in a better way with POM than at home, because at home I get more frustrated and upset and emotional about it, because I think like, oh, you have all these resources and you're not doing it, and so I get really more bitter, like in I don't know how to say it, but in English, but a bit more like bitchy, or how you would say about it, than with the POM, where I have like this broader background and I'm not so personally like in it than like at home.
Yeah, so this is getting complicated, right? And we face a lot of difficulties, and we find this that we adjust our moral standards to the situation, kind of.
Yeah, and I guess that's why it's difficult, because every situation it's its own, and you don't have like a a recipe for all of them, as you said before. There's no only solution. You have to take into account so many variables every time before taking a reaction. And for me, it happened that, like, for example, you do a reaction because that's what you did, like 2 days before. And then when you go back, you're like, fuck, that was a different environment, that were different people. I got like maybe too strong or like too little impact. So I did it wrong. And then, like, you overthink a lot, but next time probably you will take in account in a better way the variables, and you will have like a different result. So it's unfortunately human work. It's a lot of fail and trail again, and then this kind of things.
Yeah, and then sometimes I don't know if you experience that, but I sometimes find myself asking, why am I doing this again and again and again? And also the answer is because this is something that means a lot to me. So somehow there are my values again. I'd like to move on because, like I said before, like we agreed upon this, there is no real recipe for situations, because they are all, even the situations that I showed you, I kind of took from what we talked about in the groups, and phrased it a bit more broader and not like the situations that I experienced, but even people I haven't met before. We found out that these situations are happening over and over again, and it's always different. It's like the same core of situation, but the people involved are different. You are different. The situation or the surroundings are different. So it needs to. There's no one plan for all of these situations. But talking about values again, and how they affect our goals and actions, and these barriers that the tricky situations hold for us, there is something that might be helpful for you, and this is something I want to show you. We are now coming to the part about communication. Yeah, this is kind of a worksheet we can use, or I want to introduce to you, where it goes from, you have the values that create goals that we have, and to achieve these goals we take action. And remembering the drawing from before that Leandro liked so much, there are all these barriers in between, and then we have to find out how to deal with these barriers. To make this a bit more alive, I have an example for you. Like I said before, solidarity is something important to me. I hope you can you read this on the screen? Or is it too small?
It's okay.
No, it's all right.
Okay, this isn't good. It's all right. Okay, so the value is solidarity, and I try to keep it simple. So let's say this is my value, and from that I deduct 2 goals: support people on the move, and that I want to share what I can spare. So to take action, I want to donate my shoes, but I'm that kind of guy that I don't know. Once I found shoes that are comfortable, I kind of fell in love with them, and I don't want to give them away. And I'm really attached, and then I say, I would like to donate shoes because I know that they are needed, but I really love them, and this is the barrier that I feel that I can't part with them. And in order to deal with this barrier, I can do this on a cognitive base and be like, this is just a material possession, and this is a capitalistic shit that I don't need. So it makes easier to overcome this barrier. And then we have other kind of barriers when it comes to this goal to support people on the move. I want to take action by listening to people, listening to their needs, listening to their stories, and provide an open ear for people to tell their stories. But the barrier is the language, and to overcome this barrier, I can make it very practical. And find somebody who can translate or interpret for me. Do you get what this scheme is working like? Or do you have any questions on that?
No.
No. Okay. Then we can go into a little group work when we look at this middle section. Again, the goal that I deducted from my value of solidarity is to support people on the move. And I want to do distribution of presents or donation, let's say, but the barrier is that there is not enough. And how do you deal with this barrier? What are your suggestions, or what are your experiences? I think we talked about this earlier today as well, right? Now that's the part where I was what I was saying before, that I really like about non-impatient people are most of the volunteers are super good at finding solutions to tricky situations and to these kind of barriers. So kind of counting on you and your experiences.
What I've experienced, what we've done then, because there are certain things that are always not enough, and usually as well the items that are the most expensive. So then once kind of trying to assess how people are equipped, like, I mean, and this is as well then colliding with values often enough. Then kind of like asking, like, okay, someone asks you for shoes, and then you look down, you're like, but you're wearing shoes, right? So you have shoes, and I know they look maybe quite decent enough to still continue walking in them. But then of course people will say maybe like, but it's borrowed from a friend. And then, okay, and then it's kind of up to me to decide, do I believe that person? Is it really shoes from a friend? And okay, here you go, you get another pair, which are then yours. Or do I decide on, I'm still doubting that, or I still want to investigate and feel like an inspector after a while, or like the police, doubting that the person really doesn't have shoes. And another one is to what I said earlier about, like, okay, if a group of 5 asks for things, then we just give I don't know, amount X, 1, 2, or 3 of them, because we know every day there are like countless of people asking for these items. And in my point of view, it's kind of the way to bring as much equality to it as can be in a way. So because then every group has a few of these items for free from us, but still needs to buy those items on their own. But otherwise, there would be some groups which have to buy everything on their own, and some groups don't have to buy those things. So this kind of equalizing it on a very rational level, because of course, still those people then have different access to money and resources, and but these are two mechanisms I've experienced in dealing with these constant barriers of not having enough.
So you solved it within like within the group and within the warehouse, more or less, that you look how much you can give out and talk to people about if they really need it and assess it, but also communicate with the ones asking for donations, right? Okay. Are you all agreeing with what Momo suggested, or is there other ideas or approaches to the situation, to this barrier? All right. Yeah, do you find this this scheme helpful? Do you think this is something that can be helpful in your life or in your work? Or do you have questions on where and how to implement it? Because what I was going for with this thing is, oh yeah, go ahead, Momo.
I know it's nice to look at and to analyze it now in the situation, but it's not that I would think of using it in a practical on hands on the field situation, or at least for now, but maybe you're getting there.
It's not so much something to solve day-to-day problems, but it's like together with the sheet that you did in the beginning, where you look at your own values and where you also said this is sometimes hard to put into words. What like a big part of this workshop is, and you sure have realized by now, is to reflect on what keeps us going. What are my motivations? From which values do they stem from? And what kind of emotional reactions come from that? And how can I, and what I'm aiming for as a psychologist and as a psychologist, a psychological supporter for non-named kitchen, is that it's not so much about solving technical issues that you might encounter on the field, but keeping you in a healthy shape, psychologically speaking. And so reoccurring unpleasant emotions, something to deal with, and then we have to look at what kind of values are underlying there, and what kind of motivations and what kind of goals do I have, and because this, like we said before, with these unpleasant emotional reactions, like being stressed, being anxious or angry, or feeling guilty or shamed or sad, has something to do with that our goals are endangered and threatened. From the goals that we might have, and they are not necessarily as well as the values. they might not be so clear and so visible. The actions are, and then if I know what kind of goal I'm trying to achieve, it's easier to go around the barriers, for example. Does this make sense? Okay. And what we also found out a lot is, so there's this reflective part, and then again, there's something else. It's once my values are endangered or collided, I kind of have to, on the one hand, I have to understand what's going on within myself. But as soon as I'm working in a team or with people on the move or with any other human being, and this is why this last part is called communication is key, it's super important to communicate about what we experience. So once I found out that G said it about the sexist comments, that you dismiss it with a comment because you just don't see yourself not reacting to that. What I want to show you or go about to finish the workshop, or the last part of the workshop, is this secure way of communication and how to stand up for your rights. And because super important part, like when I know about my values, when I know about my goals, when I know why things are making me uncomfortable, when I feel betrayed or personally attacked because somebody used my honesty or my trust to their advantage, of course I can deal with this by myself or in the team, but at some point it might also be helpful to go out and communicate to that person. And so like in psychology or in studies, it was found out that the so-called secure way of communication is the most likely to get your message across because people listen to that and they can accept what you are telling them, even if it's something difficult to accept, like you violated you betrayed my trust, or you hurt me in some way. So there are these 5 features to communication in that case, and I want to distinguish between secure communication, insecure communication, and aggressive communication. And this, again, like a lot of things that we talked about today, I don't know if you realize that, but a lot of things you're already doing on a subconscious level, or you're doing because you already know that. And then again, the question, why are we talking about this? Why are we sitting here at our desks? And why are you telling us this, Fabian, is to also distinguish, even if you know how to securely communicate, sometimes I know this from my own experience. When I had a boss that I was doing an internship, and I also wanted to go for some seminar as well. And I asked my boss if I could leave early, but I did this in a very quiet and timid way, and it was super unclear. I was like, yeah, well, could I please? And that made it kind of easy for him to not grant me what I wanted to. And when I did this again in a different way, in a secure way, when I was clearly stating what I want to do and why, and so on, it was much easier to get what I wanted and to get the message across. So this is why I think it's important to also see what insecure and aggressive communication means, so that you can detect it within yourself, but also see if you encounter that with other people when you talk about their values, or if you hurt somebody's feelings, or if in the team the values collided and you're talking to the other person and you see that they might be aggressive or insecure, this is also something where you can take care of that person, to say so. Any questions on that so far? Okay. So yeah, I think I hope I'm not preaching to the choir here, but let's focus on the secure way of communication. So you use a clear and loud and distinct voice. You're not screaming, but loud enough so everybody can hear. The wording is clear, so you make clear what you're talking about and why. You use precise reasoning. You use I or me instead of someone or one. Express your own needs. And you can also express, or you should express your feelings directly. And for that, using a relaxed posture, having eye contact, not staring at people, or being super tense, being like still using body language, but not super uncontrollably. And now we come to something I really wanted to do this in breakout sessions and have you talk about the situations that we talked about before, and trying to communicate what went wrong in your opinion to a fictive other person. But apparently we don't have the breakout rooms here, so we can't do this. But I would still like to do a brainstorming on how to solve or find compromise in the situations that we talked about before. What do you think about that? Are you up for that, or are you done for the day?
I'm up for it. I planned until 7:30, so.
Yes, nice. Okay. Yeah, one thing is what you plan, and the other thing is what you actually can do. Okay. Are you familiar with or are you getting the part on secure communication? Then I move on to the exercise. So we want to kind of work on a solution, like go around the barrier, what we learned on the worksheet before, and let's do this with one of the situations. Which one would you like to use or to work on first? Or do you want to have another 10 minutes break and then we get into this last part?
Yes, I think that would be great, actually.
Okay, yeah, then let's do a 10-minute break and then we meet back here at 6:15, okay? All right.
Thank you.
Okay, great.
But thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Everybody back?
Yep.
All right. I was thinking, my proposals or my plan would be, because we are a bit ahead of our time, because I wanted to put you into the groups 2 times for like 20 minutes, and this was and then discuss afterwards that we did the group and discussion thing together. So after that, we are kind of done with what I have prepared for today. So I would suggest that we go about one of the situations and try to brainstorm what kind of solution we would have and how to communicate this to the person involved. And then we would be done for the day, if this is fine with everybody. What do you think?
Sounds good.
Yes.
No.
Okay, nice. So let's put it up for a vote. Which situation would you like to go for? Any takers? Which one would you prefer?
Could we maybe, well, I have a proposal and then we see, but like,
Yes.
About what happened to us last night, like you go to a squad for dinner to like, with the guys, you have like more, yeah, like, you're spending more time and they're like more friends, no? And then you get out of the squad and you see that there is 3 other POMs coming with the intention of robbing the guys you're with, and you recognize one of the guys, and yeah, and he is someone who you also kind of get along well, and you are supporting in, yeah, like daily, and even like, yeah, the next day you have to go and like bring him like a charging station and showers. Yeah. So what do you do?
Yeah, if everybody is okay with that, let's use your situation from
I agree.
like from just before. Okay. So we are talking about like, what do you do when you encounter that person the next time? So tomorrow you bring showers and batteries. And you kind of want to address the situation.
Yeah, that I think it could, yeah,
okay,
help us to think about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's clear is that we won't be able to change the past, right? What kind of maybe we have, wait a second. I just have to finish this and start it again. We can use the sheet that we did before, right? You remember, and then we take this along for the situation. Just had some trouble with the presentation, but I'll be back in a second. That's the theory on that. Okay. I love technical difficulties. All right. We will have to do this blindly. What kind of value is behind that? Ah, there it is. Okay. So, what's the value that was violated for yourself?
Fairness, maybe? I don't know.
Come again?
Fairness or equality, I don't know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that, I will say.
Okay, so equality, honesty, maybe also, right? And your friendship, maybe too.
In part, yeah.
What about the respect for the work that you are doing, Leandro? Did you felt also in that way that they were not respecting like your presence and the overall work that you are doing in the field?
Like, you mean when this happened, like when we're in the middle of like this situation?
Yeah.
Well, no, in that sense, it was like the other way around, because like when they saw us, they just like disappeared immediately. Like, yeah, it was like, oh, like, yeah, we kind of like, I don't know, got caught, like someone is watching us. Yeah.
Okay. But how do you feel now about meeting that person again?
That's the thing. I don't know how I will feel about this person. Well, first, I feel a little bit like naive and even a little bit stupid to just like not realize how many things we are missing out in terms of like dynamics between them, and yesterday suddenly I was really aware of this, and it was like, okay, and we talked about this, and then, well, my feeling is like, try to be just as I don't know, as professional as possible, and keep on doing your job without emotions and favoritisms interfering too much in your duties. But at the same time, like I don't feel like hanging out with like in my free time with this guy, obviously. Yeah.
So you're a bit disappointed and kind of you feel less comfortable with that person.
Yes, definitely.
And somehow you understand that they do what they do to make ends meet somehow, but there's a lot of things that you like in theory know about, like there's shady stuff happening, but now you saw it. Okay.
Yeah.
Is it more important for you to like to lecture that person morally, or is it more about telling them, hey, I think we need some time apart because what I saw made me feel uncomfortable?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the second option, no? As he says, like, it's not I'm not in the position of lecturing anyone.
Yeah.
I have no idea what they are actually going through, and yeah. But I mean, I put my boundary, and maybe I'm not laughing at your jokes, and we're definitely not spending time together, like in my free time, you know.
And you want them to understand and not just leave them and without them understanding. So it's more about you want to talk about why the relationship will go in a different direction from now on, or for a while, let's say.
Well, I think it's pretty evident because like we saw each other, so it's like.
I have a question.
Yeah, but I think yes.
Were you hanging out with them before? Like maybe you said that, and I missed this space, but like how close you were with these people, you know, and how, like, my overall question will be like how much your relationship will change.
Yeah, good question. I haven't figured this out yet. I'm also leaving the field soon, so I think this is a question that the volunteers who will stay longer are, like more eager to answer or are asking themselves right now. For me, it's easy. I'm leaving, and this will just like I'll keep thinking about this, but I don't have to react necessarily to this situation. Yeah.
Okay. I think it's a super important part that you said you don't want to lecture, but it's more. And there's another thing that I heard that I want to address. You said you want to carry on with your work with as few emotions as possible, and this is something I just want to discuss because from this the kind of or the way No Name Kitchen does the work on the field involves being close to the people, and this is not unemotional, I think.
But you know, sorry if I put myself in the middle, but like I think when we say when we usually say like I want to do something without emotion, it doesn't mean without emotion. It means like without me being emotional in the sense of like having unclear emotions in me, you know. I think that could be like another way of seeing it.
I agree with you. I would like to point out that I said like in the more in the more professional way, and yeah, in that sense it's like without me being all exactly confused about what I feel, or like being too I don't know, just getting in the middle, no, being in the middle too much. I don't know. Of course, here we are hanging out with the guys all the time, and that's not going to change.
Yeah, and then it's I think it's important. Yeah, go on.
No, go.
It's like in order to proceed, it's super important to find out what you want to communicate, right? Because this is also actually the hardest part of secure communication is to know what I want to tell somebody. So when it's about talking about like, okay, the way you want to do something different, you just don't want to leave and not tell the person why you are not spending time with them anymore. Then there's a very important part is you can communicate towards that person. That does not necessarily mean that they will understand.
Yeah.
But you did your part, and the understanding is the other person's part, right? If maybe they will be angry with you and they will be telling you exactly what you told us. You don't know what we are going through, and so on and so on. But this is out of our control, the reaction of others.
Can I throw like how you say that like it's not a provocation, but it might sounds it. So I want to ask sorry in advance if this is too provocative. Just please like tell it to me. Like my question that it's provocative will be like, but at the same time, who are we to be the judge of a situation? You know, like for what I experience in the field, everyone is Alibaba of someone else at one point. There's not there can be that there is a small group that is more Alibaba than someone else, but in my like what I saw, and I'm not saying that this is the reality every time, but like my experience was like that. Yeah, there's people who like steal more than others, but it's a thing that is very like of everywhere, you know. That can be like a small thing or a big thing, but like everyone at one point does it. And my question is also, you know, which kind of information, as you said before, what kind of information have we to be able to judge a situation that it's so complex? Saying to some, I mean, I don't know anything about this specific situation, so I'm talking very generally, but like giving a negative I don't know, like a negative feedback to someone, you know, like stealing can also be the only means of surviving for some people in a very emergency moment. You know, like so for one hand, I don't feel that we should judge it. At the other hand, in the other hand, I totally understand that, like, for example, being friend and having friendly relationship with some groups that, for example, are seeing us doing wrongs to someone else can become a very, very difficult situation and very problematic, because you start to change because of the power that we have as volunteers, and people that have direct access to resources can create a strong imbalance in the field between different groups. So I don't have a solution. I'm just bringing to other perspective, you know, in the discussion. I don't know if they are new, but I'm just like, from my part, I wanted to make it a bit more complicated.
Thanks for that.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Yeah, what I like, now we're getting into, like, this is, of course, a part that's also technical, but let's say talking about how Leandro feels and to communicate
Yeah, sorry.
is because we all agreed on lecturing is not what it's about. It's about saying, and I think this is also something important. If you have a kind of friendship-like relationship, that if you see something that you disapprove of, they will notice anyways that you disapprove. And once you when you tell them that this is something this is, in the end, you don't necessarily have to come with a solution into that conversation. You can say, this is something I was a bit surprised that to see you there, and I know that it's part of what you're doing, but I'm not feeling good about that. Seeing, like, I spend time with these people, they are also my friends, and I'm in a tricky situation because I want to be friends with everybody, and I also know that I have my privileges, but now I'm not feeling good about hanging out. I need some time to myself to get a clear head. Maybe this is something that you could talk about, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a good way to put it. Yeah,
I really like it too.
So, and that's the important part. Like, what is it about for you? You don't want to break off the relationship. You don't want to lecture, but you want them to know that they did something that made you feel uncomfortable, right? And you don't want to make them have a bad conscience also. And that's the thing. You just want to share what you feel like. this is what I got. And then you can talk about this and find out what to do about it. And maybe you can understand, and when they say, well, this is something all of us do, and it's part of the game, and everybody knows, and nobody has hard feelings towards somebody else, that could also be a possible outcome of that. But this is something, and it's really nice that we have this real life situation here. This is something that we always want to do. We always want to get into a tricky conversation, being prepared with the outcome, and that's mostly not so likely to happen, right? Your part is you can communicate about your feelings and what you disliked or what you didn't like, without lecturing, without making the other person feel bad, and then go from there and be open-minded about the outcome. And maybe use it as a base to discuss different values with that person. And then they, like, now I'm getting my fantasy running, but could also be that they tell you more about the hardships they are living through, and maybe you'll understand better what's happening and find out how to support in a different way.
Yes, very true. Like in that sense, one of the first questions that came to us is like, why don't we ask the guys who came to Rob, like, what do they need? Like, guys, do you need some extra things, or like, are you struggling? Like, are you like having a really hard time? But then, I mean, yeah, it's all about money, I think, and we cannot do much about it. Yeah.
Yeah. But something that you can always provide is an open ear and some time to listen, and that won't fill the stomach, won't put clothes on their backs, but it's also a super important part.
Yeah, definitely.
Did we kind of solve this thing, or do you want to talk more about this? Or do you have an idea what to do next time? What do you want to do when you meet the person?
Well, I think that the way you put it was, yeah, very elaborate and adequate, and in the end, yeah, what is clear to me is like, keep on doing your job as you do it, and don't forget to put your own boundaries when you need it. Yeah, and I think that's the idea that I will stick to and try to remember, so I can keep on going.
And that's something, and in the past weeks I encountered that a lot when I was working with the groups, that we talk, like, we have these care meetings and we talk a lot about technicalities and how to solve lack of donations and so on and so on. And then on the other hand, I hear from a lot of people that they are stressed out, that they are not burnt out yet, but on the edge somehow. And this is kind of funny how we always we are super fast in putting ourselves behind the needs of others by saying it's important to not take oneself as the most important part. And then again, if you don't think about yourself, maybe nobody does. So putting boundaries is super important. It's also, in my experience with working with people, I work with refugees in Germany, and I work with homeless people, and I work with people with psychological disorders. Boundaries are super important for everybody, because then you know the playing field, and you don't have to violate your own values just because somebody has it worse than you have it. because in the long run, what you want to do is support the people, and when you can't do this anymore because you're burned out or you're getting psychological problems, then in the end you can't even help the others anymore. All right. And what we did today, I hope you can take something away from that, and it helped to provide some framework on understanding how people act, how you act yourself, and how to show your own boundaries, how to get in touch with your own values, and setting goals that are achievable, and how to deal with barriers. But if we I think we are coming to a closure now, but I would be really happy to hear some feedback from you, or something, if there's something still unresolved, or if there's something you want to ask or add, just go for it right now.
No, I don't have anything specific.
Anything unspecific? All right. I will send out the presentation to you guys to the email. How do you say? I will send it to you anyway. So then you can look up the things if you didn't write it down, or if you don't remember tomorrow, a week from now. Then you will have my email as well. And if you have any questions later on, sometimes this happens to me a lot. I go to a seminar, I understand everything, then I sleep on it, and the next day I have all the questions that I can't ask anymore because it's over. So if there's something coming up, feel free to send me an email and ask. I'm really happy about feedback or questions. And then I would say we are done for today. Really thank you for the participation, for the interest, and for your input especially, and the discussions. I really like that. And I hope you can take something away from that and implement it in your work, your life, in your
Thank you
future.
so much. It was really helpful, actually. I really appreciate that.
Thank
It
you.
definitely was. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Fabian.
Yeah, same for me. I really liked it and enjoyed it, hearing as well the other perspectives of people dealing with situations and having it all in all more in a structured way, going through all of this. So it was really nice. Thanks a lot.
Nice. All right. Then enjoy your weekend, and I hope to see you around somewhere.
Sure.
Sure. Thank you. See you.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care, guys. See you soon. Bye
Take
bye.
care.
Take care.
Bye bye.
Ciao.
The violence in the Balkans, pushbacks every day. The traps of bureaucracy must be the European dream.